Hello, my name's Athena. Today I'm going to be speaking to you about oral history and the Witness Project. So just to begin, just a little bit about me. At the moment, I'm a final year student at the University of Sheffield. I'm studying English and history, so a dual degree. And I'm originally from London, but I'm planning on staying in Sheffield for another year because it's just such a lovely city. And I originally applied to lead the Witness Project as a part of History in the City, really because of an interest in my own family history. And I thought it would be really great to try and engage more people in their local and family history in this way, because I think it's really important and it's very engaging. So let me actually speak to you a bit more about this. So, what is the Witness Project? It's a programme run by History in the City, which is sort of a part of the history department at the University of Sheffield. We have lots of different projects going on, and the Witness Project is one of them. Its main aim is to encourage young people and students to engage in their personal and local history. We usually go into schools and engage with classes, like do workshops with students about oral history. However, this year it's been a bit tricky, which is why we're coming to you from YouTube. So the workshops are usually just introducing students to a method of history called oral history. And I'll talk a bit more about that in the next slide, but it basically just enables a bit more of a personal insight into history, and it's just a bit more engaging, which is why we try and use it with some younger students. So what is oral history? It's a bit of a tricky term. A lot of people don't really know what it's about, even people who study history. It's not really a term that's used too much, but it's just another way of recording history, usually through means of speech. So instead of a picture source or a source that's written down on a piece of paper, it's usually using audio tapes, videotapes, or interviews. A modern example would be interviews. So you'd plan and set up an interview with a family member or someone you know, or if you're doing a bit more professionally, just with a subject of interest. But in less modern times, oral history would just include stories or folklore passed down through generations, like songs and other bits and pieces like that. But it's just another way of coming at history and obtaining sources. It's essentially interviewing people on their personal life experiences, and a lot of the time it's based around a specific event. However, it can also be used for just a more general inquiry into their life and past life, and usually their childhood. And yeah, so how to carry this sort of history out can be quite tricky. A lot of the time, oral history actually already exists and it's all around us. Like, you probably would have old family videotapes at home of your parents and your grandparents, and things like that you can use for oral history in a similar kind of way. You could still gain a historical perspective from it. However, if you're trying to find out something new, or you want a more specifically tailored piece of information, it's quite good to conduct a planned interview with someone you know. So if you're trying to find out about your grandparents' childhood, or if your grandparents were alive during a war that you want to know more about, then planning an interview with them is a really good way to conduct some oral history. So it does take some planning, because a lot of it can be quite sensitive subjects sometimes. If they had lived through a major life event, sometimes there can be an element of trauma in that, but as long as you plan your questions well, it should be absolutely fine. So before you begin, you just want to make sure you know what you want to find out from this inquiry. You don't want to go into an interview and just sort of be like, well, how was it? You sort of want to be asking more focused questions that will get you a more specific answer. And then once you have identified that main aim of your inquiry, then you can go on to plan your questions. And these questions really should be based around trying to fulfill your aim. So what can we gain from oral history? You might be asking, well, why can't I just read a source, read someone's diary from, say, the Great Fire of London or something? Well, because oral history, you get to gain such a new and different perspective on history. When people speak, it brings up emotions and things that you just can't really get on a piece of paper. So it's really good for gaining a different perspective on a historical event, one that might have just been overlooked and ignored for a really long time. It's also quite accessible. It's a lot more accessible for people who aren't really too involved with history per se as a discipline, because you can just sit your grandparents down, your parents down, and ask them a few questions, and it's just a very easy way to learn and share about personal and family and local histories. And you know, like I said before, it brings up a lot of things that might have been overlooked, and as an extension of that, it brings up a lot of voices from people who have been overlooked as well. It helps us learn about marginalised communities and narratives that have just been ignored as from the structure of bigger history. So that really helps us uncover those narratives and once again just gain a different perspective. Going on from that, there are a lot of historical events that just don't really have many sources and lack evidence. It might have been destroyed in war, it might have been destroyed by following regimes, and you know, a lot of stuff can happen that leaves us with quite a lack of knowledge about something in history. So just by speaking to people who lived through it, we can piece together so many things that can be used as our evidence and sources, which is really, really cool. And then also just the more casual nature, it just, once again, it provides really valuable insights into how people think and feel. So often history has sort of been done from top down, and we look at structures and we might look at law and politics and economics. But this cultural, personal history has been overlooked for most of history. It's become more popular in recent years. However, there's still so much more to learn. So by doing just this casual talking and recording, it helps us gain a completely different aspects of history, stuff about human emotion and feelings. And then going on from that, as I said before, it's a really great way to just connect people with their own family and local history. So I'm planning on doing a few videos to do with the Witness Project to try and bring it to a wider audience, because I think it's very important. So this series is going to be sort of in two different strands and parts. So first of all, I just want to sort of talk about what skills are involved in carrying out oral history, so it can maybe help you go into your own oral history if it interests you. So how to prepare for an interview, sort of as I touched on earlier, planning aims and questions, and then also how to use the content of an interview going forward. So what a family member or what your interviewee would have said in that interview, sort of how to use it in a broader historical study if that's something that really interests you. And then the sort of second part of this series, I'm going to be carrying out some real examples of oral history, because I think it's hard to just picture it all in your head. So some real examples would really be good, probably coming from my own family, and then broadening out, hopefully, some Sheffield history as well. And yeah, thank you for watching. You can find History in the City on Facebook. I've put their Facebook name at the bottom for you, and there's a link to our website there where you can find out lots about the other projects we run, and then also just go and check out the rest of our YouTube as well. There's some really good videos from the other projects there too. Thank you.